Hello and welcome to Building Tomorrow's Insurer, the podcast where we dive into people, platforms, and the ideas reshaping insurance from the ground up. I'm your host, Nigel Fellowes-Freeman, the founder and CEO of Kanopi, and today I could not be more excited by someone who has an unbelievable amount of energy, is driving innovation in SME, and hopefully I'm going to pronounce this correctly, Skye Theodorou.
Yep, perfect.
Co-founder and CEO of upcover. Maybe I'll give you a little bit of an intro, and then Skye, I'll ask you to bring everyone up to speed with what you're all about. I understand from looking from the outside in, you're very deep in the commercial insurance space. Digital first is important to you guys. That you're on very much a mission to make protection easy, accessible, and actually maybe an enjoyable experience for small businesses. Fancy that. That'll be a pretty nice thing. And so, Skye, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much for having me, Nigel. Really appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. I think starting the story at the beginning is always really great to frame up the conversation, and that beginning is often finding out how you got to where you are. And so would you be able to help us start from your beginning in terms of, don't have to go back to the day you were born, but how did things progress for you in terms of bringing yourself to launch upcover?
Yeah, Nigel, I was so fortunate that when I was starting my career and finishing my studies, I studied business and law. I applied for lots and lots of different jobs in banking, financial services industry, and in insurance. And I got a cadetship at Zurich Insurance. And one of the things I said, I remember on my cover letter, was that I was really interested in understanding risk and how businesses understood risk. And I don't think that's really ever changed. I am very, very passionate about it. And coming from a lot of family-run businesses with my dad's businesses from a young age, I think that started me on that journey. Working at Zurich, I was able to rotate through risk, legal, compliance, claims, small biz underwriting, as well as financial lines underwriting, and the CEO team in just doing whatever it took to hit a target, learn as much about a product or initiative or what the strategy was in a specific division, and really try and improve whatever I could in the time I had in each area. But I completed my business and law degree and focused on specialty insurance, so financial lines products predominantly, after some time in SME package underwriting and fin lines underwriting, and worked in claims for a few years, fin lines claims, and then worked in the CEO team in implementing a 3-year strategy. And it was there that I got to see how insurance products are kind of manufactured through the underwriting teams and built out. The product wordings, the pricing models were reviewed by actuaries. And really, it made me start to wonder, especially with a broker intermediated segment, which business insurance is, how business owners aren't often interacted with or contacted, and you don't really know if it's going to work for them necessarily. And I think that really made me question how we could improve that specific experience by still working with great actuaries and underwriters, but also still bringing the business more into the center of what we do. And I worked in government. I thought maybe I'll try and mobilize some change in government. And I did some policy and reg reform there, also with small businesses in mind. But I just didn't feel that I could mobilize enough change within a really wonderful environment, which Zurich Insurance was for me in my career, and then also in government, where I did manage to do some change. And I built upcover. So I started the journey by just feeling like I really needed to have a go and just do my bit by trying to just change the experience for a business owner in managing one piece of their journey, which is buying insurance and managing their risk through an insurance policy.
That founding moment. Founders often have a founding moment. Like, what was the Zurich to upcover moment? Was it can you talk us through that? Like, how did you go, you know what, I'm just going to jump in here. It's my time.
Yeah, I had been thinking about it for a while. People that know me very well think that I had been doing this forever because I've been fascinated by the topic, and I did a thesis on emerging risks in business owners. So it's been something that's been bubbling away for a little bit, and I've been interested in building that expertise or a little bit of understanding of how it gets done. But I would say I was turning 30 and I felt that I just really had to. The time was now for me to just have a go and to just try and fail. That was the intent and my thinking through it. Um, I I had had quite a number of experiences and stories where I saw the challenges, and my dad was a very strong influence there. And his experience in managing a claim, or even through the business owners that I dealt with, like when I was working in Zurich itself, that's where I really felt that insurance gets its opportunity to shine. And I think being able to build a business where you get to do that time and time again is really great. But yeah, I just started it that way. I also joined Antler's program. So Antler is a startup accelerator that really kind of fosters bringing really great minds together to build a business. And they give you that really early stage funding, as well as kind of a network and a platform in which to build the business from scratch. And I thought having that kind of structure would really assist me in kind of maximizing that first time. And what I did, I had to quit my job. I had to quit my job, make a big switch. I had a business name. I didn't have much else. I had a bit of a prototype. And I remember showing, I was working in a PMO function at the time, and I was showing someone who was our manager or the head of the program, the business logo, I think, which is very similar to the upcover logo that we have today. And he was like, yeah. And then when he found out that I was resigning to give upcover a go, he was like, I'm not surprised. So that's how it started. But it was scary, and it was scary. It was scary at the time. Yeah.
And obviously you got a co-founder, Anish. How did that happen? Like, to be the co-founding meetings is also like a super interesting thing.
Yeah, I had spent about 6 months trying to find a co-founder, and I joined Antler to find a co-founder.
Okay.
I couldn't find people from within second or third degree connections. I was asking lots and lots of people, trying to have lots of coffee catch-ups, and I was really keen to join Antler to meet a co-founder. And Anish and I met 2 days before the program kicked off. It was the first one in Australia at the time in 2019, and we decided pretty much immediately we wanted to work together. And I think I really liked his background, being not from insurance at all, but having built and scaled an e-commerce platform, and I thought he seemed pretty savvy. So I really wanted to have someone with a different lens and a different perspective to the insurance journey.
Yeah, super interesting. Having some somewhat potential like naivety on the how it's been done is super important, right? In terms of trying to go a little bit first principles.
Yeah.
Before we go deeply into the business and maybe more SME, maybe we can continue on the founding story just a little bit, because there's a bunch of founders listen to the pod, and there's a few key things that always come up in terms of questions that we get back. One of them is, how do you start, which is kind of just kicked off, and the second one is, how do you get money? You guys have done a pretty good job here in terms of multiple rounds, and obviously a huge round recently in your Series A, so massive congrats for that. But can you maybe talk about some of the how your experience with fundraising was? What was maybe some pieces of advice you might be able to give, or maybe some of the pain, and then maybe some advice you can give to folks who are listening if they're just going into their first or second fundraise?
Yeah, I try and give similar advice around what we experienced, but so we did a pre-seed, a seed, and a Series A, for those that are listening and familiar with venture-backable businesses and venture-backed businesses. I think the first thing was to understand whether or not you have a venture-backable idea. And that was a lesson for me at the time joining Antler, something that's scalable, something that's tech-enabled, and probably something that's appealing to investors at the time, something that's they're really thinking and thinking about regularly. AI at the moment is something that they're obviously thinking about a lot. It was something that was challenging. Raising, particularly our Series A in the last 2 years, was a challenge. We're so proud of the outcome, like for everyone in the business, for Anish specifically, for my CTO co-founder, it's been such a huge win, and I think it's been a really good reset for the entire business. We were able to include secondaries in that as well. So some of our team members and first investors or advisors got to sell their shares as well. And that was a real pinch me moment, to be able to give something back to people that took a real big bet on you at the beginning. But we wouldn't be anywhere without the angel investors, of which we have quite a number in our share cap table, and they've been really instrumental. People that know me, I call them our brains trust. Early on, they were, a few of them would be our advisors, and we would create war rooms together when we had a typical challenge to overcome. And it's not just a check for me, never really has been. It's always been something more as well. And also hopefully something rewarding for them. And yeah, we have quite a number of shareholders, and a few, like majority have invested, once, twice, doubled, tripled. Some of them have doubled, like quadrupled their investment. So to know that they can come in and double down is such a great thing as well. And it just means you increase the bar a little bit as well of what you need to deliver them in terms of an outcome, though. But it has been good. Ways that we did it early on was through safe notes rather than a con note, so an equity instrument. Ensuring that we were ESIC eligible was really helpful because it's a really great tax benefit and CGT benefit to those investors that choose to do that and are able to. And some of our investors have required ESVCI eligibility as well, which adds a little bit of complexity when you're an insurance or finance business, but ensuring that we manage that too has been really important. And I think, yeah, it's been great overall. I think ensuring that it's not just a check is probably been the most important thing for us. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you find you got your money? Was it your second and third rounds from referrals and relationships that you had that then kind of gave you intros to those folks? Was it super cold? How did you kind of go about kind of raising the capital?
Yeah. So Anish would describe it as a process. And he just ran his process and kept running it. I'm like, particularly in the seed and pre-seed rounds, and where we were using safes, a lot of it was introductions led. It's always been a warm introduction as well, even for the lead of our Series A. Getting introductions from your other investors or people that are close to the business or first-time customers. Warm, and the warmer the better, and sometimes second or third, like emails or introductions from as many people that know that person as possible. That's what has always been helpful as well.
Yeah, we found exactly the same. And let's go a little deeper into upcover. That's all right. Now, looking from the outside in, it looked like you've kind of started off a little more niche in terms of maybe gig economy or like a deeper vertical of SME, but obviously now it's really broadening out, and because of the scale that you guys are now achieving. Can you kind of talk us through that transition, maybe like the starting off specific and now getting broader and broader, maybe some of the challenges and wins that comes with that?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, trying to find product market fit and getting to market in the insurance industry it's a hard thing to do because it's such a heavily regulated industry in Australia. Being able to do it and start to learn where the flywheel is also something that's really important. And I think access to product for anyone that's in distribution knows what a challenge that is, regardless of how big the business is. Access to product is always a challenge. We've always worked with niches, and back in the very first whiteboard sessions with Anish, the co-founder that you keep mentioning, he's my co-founder COO. I was always pitching him SME and business insurance and white collar and just how big of opportunity it is, how the insurance products are mandatory, and it's always been my vision. I think we've been looking at also trying to look at where the biggest pockets of growth are as well in industry segments. And gig economy is where we started. We decided to start with gig economy because it was so fast growing. It was a very big, lots of businesses being built out at the time. So yeah, that's where we started. And it was a great lesson and a great learning for us as well on where our customers might be, and how easy it is or isn't to build a product from scratch, which is what we did initially. We built a really innovative product from scratch with insurance partner backing. And then I think where we got a lot of our success was actually in a product that was traditional, in a partner-based concept where we streamlined the question set, and there was a kind of referral process through. So that's where we really rebuilt the business from. And it was just working with market-leading insurance partners and product and giving that in a very streamlined experience to business owners directly, so they can kind of, receive the tools themselves to underwrite themselves and get answers to questions like they're speaking to, a really in-depth, knowledgeable underwriter.
Yeah. Did you have to lean on a bunch of your experience from Zurich? Obviously, you mentioned that you rotate around through a number of different departments, right? You'd have had to, I imagine, pull all of those pieces together while you were building the pillars of upcover.
Yeah, it was insanely instrumental.
Mm-hmm.
I was so fortunate while I was at Zurich. I worked my very first day in the office. I was working in the exec floor, and I thought I'd be in a mail room. And I just got to ask these incredible professionals hundreds of questions every day about a product or about a segment or about, a team and how something was delivered, a nat cat rollout during a catastrophe. It was just incredible. And I think it's just been really great to be able to apply all of that knowledge. I think as well, I've always been like it's not the most exciting of topics, insurance or business insurance or SME. But I am so passionate by those topics that I've also been just always wanting to optimize them myself. So I'm always a process-driven or systems-driven person in terms of how I try and create repeatability in all of my tasks. So I was always able to create and do a lot of work when I got into a bit of a rhythm of things. And I think that also kind of put me in good stead in the startup world, as you know, Nigel. It's a lot. But yeah, definitely, my time at Zurich was instrumental for sure.
Super important, and hopefully, I imagine that also led a little bit into a few of the things that you really wanted to optimize. And I know that up covers a few promises and some of them are simplicity and speed. Yeah. And so the learnings of that would have come, I imagine, from being in and around and speaking to customers, understanding what they're looking for, and then it becomes a fundamental pillar of importance for up covers delivery. How do you, and on the flip side of that, when you think about creating products, and especially within the regulated industry, there's compliance and there's governance, and sometimes speed and compliance can go against each other. And obviously you're balancing them incredibly well. So can you talk us through that? How do you internally in the business think about those two things? Because they can be seen to be kind of competing versus being in synergy.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And I think without being having gone to law school and having worked and unpacking and applying insurance products through litigated claims, and without having worked in, the in-house legal team at Zurich for a little bit, I don't know that I would have been able to have such conviction.
Yep.
That in a post-Royal Commission environment, I think the whole purpose of the Royal Commission was to outline that customers should be at the centre of these things. So some of those 13 key findings weren't really a surprise to me. And I do believe, and my whole team and culture, like the culture in our business, we know that compliance has to start with us. And we have to be, gold standard in terms of how we interact with customers. One of our investors is Brian Hartzer, who's the past CEO of ANZ and Westpac. And during the Royal Commission, those businesses were really under fire. And I'd say that, one thing that he told me was the best form of compliance is automation. And I think where we get our best wins is where we've really unpacked a specific need or user experience of a customer, and through experience of doing it, 5, 10, 15, 100, 300 times, 500 times even, we then build an automation, and that those things really delight the customer. And then you've tried and tested as well, so it's correct.
Yeah.
I am starting to get second opinions on my approach as well. And so far, so good, I would say.
I read that. I think I read that somewhere actually, that you were automating like 20, 30% of your processes every few months, which sound like when you compound that over time, an enormously impactful thing within the business. Are you seeing that kind of compounding effect within the
That's what I
business?
say to the team every time I do a town hall. I say 20% of what we do every 2 or 3 months should be automated.
Mm.
And if you're not doing that, we need to think why. Why not?
Mm-hmm.
Why are we not trying to just make more improvements? I think that's the expectation of a 21st century business. Whether you're online or not, the need of your customers and their increasing demands is that you do need to start using technology to empower that experience a little bit. And we have quite a number of niches that we serve now. So building out automations is really key, whether you call them AI agents or not, or bots or chatbots, or I don't know. But automating as much of the experience as possible so you can just focus on exceptional experience then is great.
That's all. Well, Skye, and we lasted 20 minutes without mentioning AI.
Yeah.
So I think we've broken the seal. We now have to go deep. How insert what you think about. So I imagine that everyone I speak to on the pod that's starting to think about this, we've heard generally folks are thinking about internal tools versus kind of customer facing tools today, and that primarily because the LLMs being predictive model, and like you can't really get a deterministic outcome, and therefore in a regulated environment that becomes really tricky, especially on the customer side. Is there any specific, without sharing all of the what's the word I'm looking for, the important ingredients of the business, anything you can share with us in terms of how you're thinking about the business with AI?
It's interesting because us as co-founders, we all have a different opinion, which is really probably a good thing. Anish is really, really excited by it and uses it a lot in a lot of different ways. Is always unpacking and investigating the newest tools in market that are being kind of created. And it's incredible to see how quickly AI advances are being made for businesses in certain industries, and insurance is definitely one that's going to really get a lot of bang for buck out of its invent, I think. For us, I'm very careful with it. I believe that in order to be compliant, we need to be really clear about how it is that we communicate and what we say to business owner customers. And by using AI, sometimes it is not the best student in the room. Is probably, but I do think it can be trained. So if you can take it politely as something that is a student that can be trained to do better things, building an internal upcover agent for ourselves and for our team members when they have questions, so they don't necessarily have to come to me, is something that we've been, building and interested in, particularly about customer queries and how to quickly answer customer queries so that it's bite-sized, but also still getting quick time information, particularly as we, want to scale and, double or triple revenue, etc. It's something I think we have to be really careful with, though, because I have been telling people it's not a silver bullet. Yeah. It is, a lot of the tools are a garbage in, garbage out, and it's a lazy person's way out as well. Particularly because insurance is very heavily legally oriented. They are contracts. It's important to take your time and to pay attention. So I think so long as it's blended, and it's a blended solution of both. We use AI note takers quite a lot, and we find them really, really helpful, particularly in the specialty division of our business. And that's always a help, but it has to work with your own note taker at the moment, tools today. In the future, I think there should be a lot of businesses that have their own kind of tool that's consumed their own content, their own templates, their own knowledge base, and they can build their own internal agents to get access to documents, to understand a decision around something done historically. Those things will be really helpful to businesses in the future in terms of how it could also be used maybe to improve efficiencies around communications to clients as well for distribution. I think it's possible. So it's something that we're playing around with.
Yeah, it's early, isn't it? I saw. I don't know if you saw the Klarna CEO. Their IPO was very. But actually, I don't think it ended up going IPO. I think it was pre-IPO hyperbole, and they basically got rid of 100% of their customer service team, and went 100% kind of large language models to do the customer servicing, and has walked that back just a little bit now in terms of maybe it's 80%, not 100%. And I follow a guy who kind of runs a big fund in the US called SaaStr, and he has a bunch of customer service investments. And he said the majority of businesses that are using the platforms get about the best ones get 30 to 40% of queries answered effectively. And so I think that speaks exactly what you're saying there, which is some sort of triage, a 30-40% uplift of automation that you can get the right answer to the customer. But you do then need to layer that in with how do you power up the internal team, and how can a team of 3 actually act like a team of 5 versus a team of 0.
Yeah, exactly. And I think people should take care. I have looked and spoken to a lot of AI tech businesses as well, in assisting them with insurance. And I think using closed information loops and kind of building your use cases very carefully around very specific interactions is probably the best way to go for today's tech, and then to start building on from there. And I think there's no harm if you've got the permission to the data to be able to use internal data, if you have it orchestrated correctly, to build your own LLMs and kind of test that in your own private model, not in a public model. I think that's always helpful for an internal kind of sharing or knowledge tool for your own business as well.
Yeah, and obviously data orchestration is a very important part for your business, right? It's very important, and underwriting is very important. Claims insurance is a data business, really. It's the oil that makes an insurance business work. And I think that you've been using it a lot to impact customer experience. Can you maybe talk to that a little bit around how you've really used the data, like you mentioned earlier, garbage in, garbage out, but good data coming in to improve the customer experience, and then maybe where you think that's going to evolve to?
Yeah, I think depending, so there's a lot of ways that people that are not a small, medium business owner think, and when they talk about them, even how I'm speaking right now, they say SME, or I say small business. Business owners don't really see themselves that way. And identifying them and those segments is also, fairly challenging too. So how do you build repeatability in how you engage with that customer, but still make them feel like they're speaking to someone that cares and that also knows them? That's the thing, that's the challenge. I think our data is fairly strong. We were fortunate enough to be able to build this business from scratch. So, we don't have a very complex architecture map or system of an incumbent. We also have been able to spend a lot of time and energy rebuilding and labeling things correctly. One of our earliest, I think she's been with us 3.5 years, team members has just done a master's in data. So it's something that we spend a little bit of time thinking about, and also about how we can improve it, because it's not quite perfect yet. It is a data business. It really is. And if anyone isn't investing yet in making sure that their data is seamless and their customer IDs are correct, it's very, very true. And I think some of the things we're also kind of reducing, other reliance on other people's sources of truth, so that we have now an upcover source of truth, which is our own for our own customers. It's really, really important. And you can't build an LLM without it either.
Definitely can't. It's data from the carriers that we work with every day. Like, the primary job before they're doing any of this nice and shiny stuff is just data cleanliness, and there's a lot of work to do there, especially when data's in a bunch of different systems that
right.
Don't talk together. It's pretty hard to then kind of layer tools on top, and so there's definitely have a jump there in terms of having the ability to start greenfield and set data strategy early on. I think it will pay huge dividends from a platform perspective.
Yeah.
And when you thought about building, you mentioned there you kind of built everything proprietary in house. Do you have a view generally in the business of build versus partner versus buy? Like, have you obviously when you're building businesses, you have to make those decisions all the time, right? Which is, what are the things that you go, no, this is stuff we have to build, is absolutely core, and no, these are things that we can work with other businesses on. And you as a founder have to make all of those decisions all of the time. How do you go about them? How do you go about thinking, yeah, this is something we can offload, or actually this is something we want to, this is really critical to the business, and therefore we need to build it and own it?
That's a good question. And I think it changes, and it
Mm-hmm.
should always change.
Yeah.
Early on, we are a services business that very much is a tech business. So balancing those two things has always been really important.
Yeah.
So owning and building tech has been something that we've wanted to be able to build in-house. What we do is we focus on the tech and distribution side. So we haven't yet been foraying into, underwriting the insurance products as well.
Mm-hmm.
We started working with agencies early on, and I think the lesson was that we should really in-house as much as we can, so that we can own, the product cycles and the delivery. I think now, as there's so much to do, there could be certain things that we might work with a certain partner on. And I think choosing the best partner is really down to a fit, I guess, of the certain type of opportunity and the partner's ability to deliver and how they work with other partners too. It's so hard to decide, but there is quite a number of potential partners out there. But for us, we have a core engineering team in-house, and we hire that engineering team ourselves as well, and they are fully distributed around the world. So the view always is that, we will be using and working with partners, but we do need to own as much tech as possible.
Yeah, makes complete sense. And obviously a part of that is obviously part of you from raising, or the money that you raised. I'm sure the team's scaling up. And so how's that process been? How's it been, taking the money in and then starting to scale the team up, and not just locally but globally, and all the things that come with that? How do founders listening, how have you been thinking about scaling the business?
Yeah, we have more than doubled, I think, in 6 months.
Wow.
So it's been really busy. So we have around 40 people in the business now, and I think we might have had about 17 around signing the term sheet potentially.
Yeah.
It's been an amazing experience. I think a challenge was like, how do we hire a line of management and fire ourselves as co-founders from as many roles and functions as possible? And it was something I could only ever hypothesize before I experienced it. And how do you find the right talent for a startup environment? Upcover is a very unique culture. You have to be really into it because we're fully remote as well. And there is so much complexity because you are dealing with business insurance, and digitizing whatever fun or simple or easy experience it is on the outside. Inside, it's very, very complex, and the complexity almost never changes. It's always evolving. So I think it's been incredible. It really has been incredible, and identifying and seeing some of the team flourish this past 6 months that we've hired has been probably one of the highlights of, having raised a Series A. I think as well, being able to, and Nigel, I mentioned this to you just before we started the call, but, being able to deploy some of that Series A capital in secondaries by rewarding some of our earliest team members with some of the ESOP that they sold. That was also amazing, because being able to change the lives or help some of our team members in Pakistan or in Spain, have a deposit for a nest egg for their own apartment or build a house, that's been incredible. I never anticipated, I hoped, but I never truly really thought through how Upcover and us building this business could really assist people so positively. It's not just about a customer experience now, and that's been really great. There's been a lot of people that are joining that are family members. close friends. There's lots of us, a very strong referral loop in this business. So I guess that's a true compliment.
Absolutely. Compliment to the culture that you're building. Fantastic. So good to hear. And look, we've been cheering from the outside. You're doing a fantastic job. I'd love to gaze into the future a little bit. I could talk to you literally all day, but I'd love to gaze into the future. Otherwise, we'll be here all afternoon. Now, the SMA, we're going to gaze into the future in terms of thinking about the SME market specifically.
Sure.
It's still largely analog. How far do you think we really are towards true digital transformation? And if we're having this conversation in 5 years' time, what can you describe to me what you think the market's going to look like?
I think the market is largely analog and will continue to be in every Western culture that has business insurance. It is an intermediated business and experience. I think it will become, certain parts will become digitized. There's always going to be a place for a trusted person because it is a trust-based product. So I think it's just unpacking where that tech really sits and where the intermediated businesses can kind of leverage it as much as possible. We see so much opportunity, almost and the SME space is so large that it's really just about picking as many niches that we think we can kind of build a scalable business out of and just doubling down for us. And that's our focus over the next 5 years, making quite a few specific bets. But oh gosh, there's a lot that we can all do. And even if it's just thinking about from an insurer or a distributor, their way of doing things today, I mean, automate, 20% every few months and they won't know themselves in 6. And that's kind of how we try and think and do things in upcover. But it's a relentless pace and journey. But I think tech is kind of pushing us all in that direction now. Everyone,
you can't hold yourselves back. Well, look, Skye, it's inspirational listening to you. Like, you're doing such a wonderful job. It's great to hear. Things are going so well on your end. Thank you again for your time today. It's been so nice talking, and the best of luck for the rest of the year.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. Bye.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks, everybody. I hope you really enjoyed the episode. If you do want to hop on and look at mine and Skye's faces, you can head over to YouTube and you'll be able to see the video version of the podcast. And as always, if you'd like to hear more from industry leaders who are pushing the boundaries in insurance, check out the other episodes of our podcast series, Building Tomorrow's Insurers. From me, from Skye, thank you and have a wonderful day.